Ma avete visto? Avete visto la vittoria? Capuzzo! Capuzzo! Manca 2 minuti dalla fine! Che vittoria che abbiamo fatto! Dobbiamo ballare, fioi! Italia! Italia! Italia!
Italia!
E quello era oro! Per quello ho smesso queste scarpe. Guarda che bello.
I honestly have absolutely no idea where we go from there. We've dropped the mic already. Congratulazioni, amico mio. Congratulations, my friend. A win for Italy in the Six Nations. Finally, what a moment. Kia ora tātou, welcome into the breakdown. Changing it up, just making a cameo back on a Monday night. Kirst also out, so me, Ricky Swan-Allen, but Mills Mullane is here, Sir JK and Jeff Wilson. JK, what a moment. Did you leap off the couch? What was it like?
Yeah, no, I was just firstly really happy for Kieran. Kieran Crowley's done a great job with Benetton Rugby and obviously just taken over, but just so happy for the Italians. I mean, they the hardest thing when you're coaching them and when you're playing the game, no one loses that much. You think about it, they lose a lot, but they get out every week and they give it everything. So I was just so happy for them. It was great. They'll still be partying now, Mills.
Yeah. You reckon Rassi Erasmus in South Africa going, oh, we're not getting in there now. I mean, Italy have won a game, which means they're not going to get booted out. Oh, that was remarkable, Mills. Like, it was a magical moment for a team. There was desperation. We got some signs last year when they played the All Blacks. Yeah. They'd made some steps forwards. Their defence was outstanding, and to do it the way they did it and where they did it, even more important, away from home, a remarkable performance.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The fact that they'd done it away from home and the way that they played and finished it off like that, quite remarkable. So they've obviously been building for a while. You know, Kieran been in there and the mentality that he's sort of given the guys and I suppose that hardened edge, that's come away from what they've done in the weekend. So congratulations to them.
Can you give us a sense, JK? It's easy for us, and we read probably the UK press and all of that saying the Italians have to go. We want the South Africans in. For the Italian rugby public, have they felt that, and has it been kind of, does it weigh for them, or are they like, whatever?
Yeah, no, it does weigh on them, and I think that the most important thing for me was actually seeing Capuzzo, who actually is quite a thin man. I think he's like 70 kilos dripping wet, because when I was playing, there was the directives from upstairs and committees saying pick big guys. You know, that rugby's about big guys, but now it seems that there's a better sort of pathway. Their under-20s have done very well. I think they came third, and I just think they are building nicely. It's tradition in Italy now to be in the Six Nations. They won't want to get rid of them. It's a big population, you know, 55 million people. So, you know, there's a big TV audience, and I think it's good for the game. I can't see them going anywhere, especially after that one.
Yeah, and what I love about it is the reaction from Kieran Crowley as well. Like, that's just the start of the journey. No reaction.
What reaction?
Yeah, too. What reaction? Well said. It was like, you know, like, this is the start of his journey with this team. But to get that sort of momentum, to get that sort of performance out of them, the sort of belief that they will get from that, knowing the fact that just in 15 months' time, there's a Rugby World Cup just over the border. You know, that's what they can look at and go, you know what, we're building nicely towards that. There
was a really nice touch at the end of the game from Josh Adams as well. We can have a look at this. He tries to hand over the man of the match medal. He does. And look, Wales, I guess, feeling that too, the Welsh, the English and the Scots. It's been a tough go, and you can just see the chatter between them, right? And that's that little element of how Wales recognising how big that moment was.
Yeah, and I think that for me, you know, there are moments in games of rugby, and Italy traditionally haven't won those moments. I think what Kieran will bring them is process. So when you hear players talk previously, they say, oh, it was bad luck, not good enough. But now they're saying, we're going through our processes, we're understanding our processes. Because Italy can play incredibly well for 50 minutes, but they then drop away from their process. So bringing some consistency to that and staying in the football game, and then having some X-factor players that can do that in the last minute, you know, you're going to win some games.
The flip side of things, England obviously going down to France, and huge pressure on their coach, Eddie Jones. It's been building and building. You only have to read any of the UK papers, and everyone's favourite in New Zealand, Stephen Jones. Eddie must go and should be replaced by Warren Gatland, so should be replaced by a Kiwi. But Eddie Jones, Wayne Pivac, Gregor Townsend, 3 coaches under huge pressure from the home nations. The fans all want them gone. They all want Sean Edwards in to replace them. Jeff, those 3 coaches, will all 3 be there come World Cup time next year?
Yeah, when they say Sean Edwards and they say you can come back and coach, he doesn't bring any of the French players with him. They know that, right? He's got to coach the teams that they've got, and this is about talent, it's about stock and the way that they're playing. Do I think they'll sack their coaches? No, I think it's too close to a Rugby World Cup, but there's added pressure, and all of a sudden you'll get to those autumn internationals, and when you go on the tour in the middle of the year, you still have to perform, JK. That's the expectation as a head coach. They'll have to make some adjustments, and there'll be some convincing they'll need to do with some of their players and with the public and clearly the media. In saying that, Stephen Jones will have a crack at anyone and any opportunity. Usually it's us. It's nice to have the attention on somebody else.
Except for the woman who loves the women's rugby.
Yes.
I think the interesting thing for me, Mills, and you've lived over there and you've been in. So Wales defending champions, and it's a fishbowl over there. Ask, Graham Henry and Sir Graham Henry and Sir Steve Hansen. It's really hard to coach over there. It's like New Zealand. Townsend came in with high expectations, under-delivered. Eddie Jones is always going to be under the most pressure because England aren't dissimilar to us. You've got to win a Six Nations on your way to winning a World Cup. It's like us losing the Bledisloe or losing against...
We haven't done that in so long, that doesn't count.
Exactly. OK, South Africa then.
Yeah, just South Africa. Let's stick with something that's relevant.
So, and so they will be under incredible pressure, and that's what the Six Nations is like. Will they get rid of them? I don't think they will. I think there's too much at stake, and we're too close to the World Cup.
Doesn't that there, though, showcase the expectations that the Six Nations have on their coaches compared to what we have here as a championship? Obviously we've sort of dominated apart from last year when we didn't quite win it, but the fact is the expectations for all those nations to come out and win year in, year out, is obviously producing, the goods. And the way France have sort of kicked on from that, having... their development. Isn't it great when you look at it in terms of comparing, competitions? That is, historically the best.
When I watched this game, though, it was the fact when England had to play some rugby, they made mistakes, made errors, and they didn't have a game plan that was going to be able to generate points quickly. Yes, they could wear you down. Yes, they were prepared to go into battle. Yes, they could get themselves some sort of opportunity on attack. But in the end, they just made so many errors, JK, for me. And I look at the fact that France actually didn't play that well. They just did enough to win this game. But for England, fundamental mistakes. They were turning the ball over, weren't winning the contest at the breakdown. When you're doing this against arguably one of the best teams in the world right now, you are going to come off second best. They failed this test, I think, JK, but they'll need to be better to be a contender in 15 months' time.
There's pressure, isn't it? It's pressure. And I guess, they're lacking a bit of confidence. The week before, they're down to 14 men right from the get-go. So I think there's still enough signs here for England.
Yeah,
so, hey,
have England fallen that far? In reality?
I don't think so. But obviously the expectation on Eddie, given what he's done when he first came, compared to where he's at now, they're calling for his head. Well, Stephen Jones is. That's for sure.
I think technically one thing that I noticed changed a wee bit from the World Cup. I don't think the last 2 yards of the defence was as aggressive as it was at the World Cup. So they're coming up fast, but then they seem to be passive, especially against the French. And so they were losing a lot of those contacts, of which then the French were getting over the advantage line and getting a roll on. I come back to the under-20s. I said the Italians had a really good under-20s. Last time that England were really strong consistently, they'd come from a good 20s. That French side 3 years ago was their under-20 side that won the World Cup. So you can see some form. But at the end of the day, there's just so much pressure. There's so much money on this. There's so much things that put you under pressure. But I think Eddie particularly is under more pressure than the rest.
It'll be interesting to see in a couple of years' time if there's a gulf from not having had the under-20s for the last couple of years, which are going to come back next year, but we'll see if that has actually left a hole. Talking about how good France are means, well, look, I love watching this trial. Watch it any time. It's probably not going to be quite so fun for some of the guys, but let's go back. Try from the end of the earth.
There it is again. Gonzalez, Dello, Benazzi, Interback. Laurent Caban, Dello, what a superb movement! What a try! One of the all-time great tries!
JK, you made your tackle. You made your tackle.
Actually, The only thing that worries me is some of those names their sons are now playing.
That's what makes me feel old. Emil Intermac, one of my favourite all-time players, and now you're watching his son.
I had a unique view of that. I was on the bench. I was on the bench and I was like, oh no. You know, look, it was a remarkable test to be a part of. Series, actually, France coming here, and it gave you a sense of what they're exactly capable of, and we're seeing it now. In the current time, that's the sort of rugby I see them instinctively wanting to play.
How far ahead have they come in the last, well, possibly since the last World Cup, Millsy?
Well, I think what you're seeing is an element where we haven't seen in the past. Before you'd say, you know, they'll turn up and they'll have a crap game and lose by 40 the following week. They'll turn it around and win. We're now seeing consistency, and the consistency is the fact that what you spoke about, JK, you know, the under-20s team really coming through together. Yes, they didn't play as well as what they would have wanted to against England, but what do? They turn it up when they need to be able to win. So that consistency now with the French side is very even, as opposed to one week they're good, the next week they're horrible, the following week they're outstanding.
What I'm noticing is actually a mix between what I would call Southern Hemisphere style rugby and Northern Hemisphere style rugby, right across the Six Nations side. So, you know, Sean Edwards coached with Gats. Gats took some New Zealand, but then adapted. You know, we see them, they do the big, heavy, slow ball stuff, but then they're starting to play. And I think the French have got both those styles going. I don't think it's any credit to Southern Hemisphere. It's just that we play a different style and they've adapted a combination, which I think they're better at the moment. Are we struggling to adapt with Northern Hemisphere? Well, we did last year, and we'll decide this November.
The finishing table, I mean, they cleared out really France and Ireland at the top in the Six Nations and winning that Grand Slam as well. Here is that table, well clear at the top, and then a heck of a gulf between Ireland and England as well. I guess the only question for France is going to be that pressure of expectation, Jeff. A World Cup on home soil, they are building, they know they have got this team, they're flying up the rankings.
Yeah, it's an interesting
or do they
one because...
I'm French, I don't care.
Well, I think they'll ride that wave of emotion. They'll ride that wave of support. Then all of a sudden they've got, I think, everyone in behind them. And the way that they're playing, the composure they're playing with, and the fact they are young. And a lot of that sometimes can just wash over you, the fact that in the end we're on such a roll. It's whether or not they have an odd setback in the next 15 months, whether they lose a key player, a key individual. I think, JK, that might be the only time all of a sudden you start losing that cohesiveness. You lose a test match you shouldn't lose. They're not doing that right now. And to your point, Mills, the fact they look like a team, this is un-French-like, is the fact that every week I look at them and I think, JK, they're going to win because across the board they have the measure of their opposition.
For me, they're favourites.
Yep.
For me, they're favourites for the World Cup at the moment, and those things can change. Like, if you asked me to pick the All Blacks today, I'd pick it on form, and those things can change. But right now, I think they're favourites. I firmly believe, like England did in 2002, you've got to come down and win with a bit of adversity. They came down here, they beat us in Wellington. I think Neil Back
got down to about 13 at one point, weren't they? Yeah.
But they won those games, and those things give you confidence. Them winning this at home against England when it was in the balance for a long time will give them confidence. You need that confidence so that when you get to the World Cup, it's not new. You know, those experiences, Mills, you've lived them before.
Yeah, but they've lived also winning and winning against, you know, not the minnows. These are the top teams. When you talk about top four teams, they're actually doing it convincingly. So that will give them some strength as well. And you're right. I mean, injuries is going to play a big part. How deep is this sort of squad? How much depth has he actually got? So they're in a hell of a good place.
I mean, captain analysis over here, though.
Well,
you noticed something.
Well, I've noticed something, and I talked about something last week, was their accuracy at the breakdown. Well, if you're trying to generate fast ball, getting the ball and making it available is absolutely critical. So just watch the ball placement here from these French players. Out and long. Mills, this is something we taught, JK, we were taught with your young kids and you're teaching kids nowadays. The moment you get to ground, it's your responsibility to get the ball back. Look at the regeneration and the speed. You add the clean out to it, then all of a sudden, they're unstoppable. And yes, they get good carries, but watch, they're not actually carrying straight into bodies. They're finding spaces. This is just quick ball. I look at this, Mills, and I'm going, you know what? If you can do this with our side, you can get the sort of momentum that they're getting. We'll have the same type of threats. I'm seeing us on top of the ball, not presenting the ball cleanly enough, Mills, for us to take advantage of our speed and our skill.
And for those little wee things, you need really big buy-in because it's the smallest things, but it makes a massive difference. And so you're seeing, yes, they're going forward, but the times that they're not going forward, their first instinct is to get that ball out. And look how fast that ball is becoming. The carries are really good. The next person that's coming, around around the corner. You know, they're getting really quick ball again. There's no doubt in their mind what they need to do, get that ball out. And what happens? They're whipping it out from the base. And so it's really, really, really quick.
It's not rocket science, though, is it? To go, I need to get the ball away from my opposition, away from the body.
Well, it's also system science, right? Like when you're showing the French, I'm watching the English, and they're coming forward 3 yards and then planting. Whereas if you play the French, you've actually got to get them over their advantage line, get in front of them, really win that contact. So those systems are coached, right? The defensive system in England, I think the first thing Eddie will need to have a look at is that. But then if there's new techniques, then we need to start thinking about what we're going to implement, you know, this long reach or how we're going to do it. The Irish I like because they have this swinging, I call it a swinging attack.
Yeah,
Swing,
absolutely.
got many guys in motion. So there's a lot of teams that have showed their cards for next year's World Cup, and I think it's really exciting. I can't wait for November.
Just my small point with that is, but it's not so focused on the gain line. It's on getting quick position.
Yeah.
So it's not. Don't let the attack defence reset, realign, come forward to you. Just move it anyway, and they're prepared to concede the gain line to get quick ball.
Ireland, I guess probably with so much focus on France and then Italy this weekend, they kind of quietly went about their business, but clearly second, they're always going to be there or thereabouts. They have been for the last couple of years, Mills. Where do you see them at the moment? And given, of course, they're coming here not too far away, now that we've got some open borders coming.
I think they'll be fairly confident about where they're sort of heading. I guess the one, and it's not so much of a negative as their drivers. You know, he's been around for a wee while. Who is coming through that's going to take over, you know, Johnny Sexton? That would be the only sort of concern I would have in terms, if he falls over, the next guy that steps in, there's a massive gap between that. But like your point, they've evolved. You know, they're prepared to slow things down. They're very good at slowing the ball down and keeping the guys up. But they've also, in terms of the attack game, they've evolved in terms of, you know, spreading it and keeping the ball alive. So clearly, second place for them. But, you know, they've still got more to offer in terms of their depth.
Are they too reliant, though, on Sexton? Given he's ageing, he's taken some knocks, and although I feel terrible when he's not old, but he is getting older, end of his contract coming up after the tournament.
I would look at what they've created for Jamison Gibson Park at halfback. The fact I think he's actually become, you know, they've moved on from Conor Murray and they've seen a different style of player in Gibson Park, just like Dupont's doing for France. They're the threat. They're the key player for me, is the fact they're the ones that are testing the defence. Yes, there's no doubt there's the leadership and what Jonathan Sexton brings, but I look at it that they've got such confidence in what they're doing on their front football. I think, JK, I just really like what they've got themselves through. They didn't quite get it done here, but all the signs are so positive.
Yeah, look, it was. They won all the games. They just lost to France, who eventually won it. So, my biggest concern is Sexton. I think he's one of the world's best standoffs. He's a great organiser. His out-of-hand kicking is next level from a tactical point of view. I think there's a big risk for anybody who's selecting to World Cup. Players tend to hang on for World Cups, so people retire after World Cups. And so that's going to be interesting if he can stay healthy and fit enough, because 1 year's a long time when you're starting to
36 now, and I think so 37 this year, so 38 by the time that World Cup comes around, or by the time the end of that contract.
But I don't think we should also underestimate the influence that Farrell's had. He was assistant to Joe. He's come in, he's made some changes, he's got a new coaching staff in the back room, and I love some of the things they're doing on attack. So, you know, in order of risk for the World Cup, I'm going, you know, France, Ireland, England with a big question mark, and then the other two on their day. But, you know, I think France and Ireland are there or thereabouts.
Well, looking at that too, I mean, there's nothing like looking ahead at a World Cup sort of 18 months out.
I love
it. We love to do a good preview.
Way too early.
But let's have a look firstly at, these are the current world rankings, so South Africa, New Zealand, France and Ireland, but what it probably actually means is more towards the World Cup, because the draw's already done, right? So this is one side of the draw, and I think the word you use is stacked. And Pool A, so New Zealand, France and Italy. Pool B, South Africa, Ireland and Scotland. There are teams, any of those top probably 4 teams, no offence to Italy or Scotland, capable of winning the World Cup, but they might not get past a quarter-final, Jeff.
And this is the problem when you set those positions so far out from a Rugby World Cup. Football doesn't do that. They do it a year out. You know, they look at the world rankings, and that's why I think World Rugby has to find a better system so they can make sure that the seedings are right, JK, getting close to the big tournament. It doesn't happen in tennis. The way it's set up, right, the seedings are looking, if people win in their draws, 1 and 2 will end up in the final, the top 2 teams.
The draw in tennis goes out the day before the tournament starts.
Exactly, and the closer you can get that, then all of a sudden the more likelihood you'll get the best 2 teams. And ultimately, on the biggest stage, isn't that what you're looking for? What we're going to see is 2 of the top 4 sides right now, and I don't think it's going to change much before next year's Rugby World Cup, will be out at the quarter-final stage. To me, that's unacceptable.
I mean, can anyone understand the rankings, Mills? We lost to 2 of those teams in November. We haven't played since. They've had the Six Nations, and then here we are still 3rd.
There is a formula on the website, but you click on it and all of a sudden you get really confused.
I'm not good enough at maths at the best of times, let alone to work out what the formula means.
I'll tell you what, if you're going over, you're taking a risk. I mean, you are taking a risk. I mean, that's what we're going to face. That's what's going to be in front.
It's going to be South Africa,
there's no risk. Or Ireland. It's South Africa.
It's in France. There's no risk,
having a great time anyway.
There's no risk.
To be fair, it's going to be a great time. You can go anywhere from there. But look, Mills, I look at it, and I think it's going to be a great shame if teams go into that tournament in great form and we lose them too early.
But also having to tactically think about whether you... I'm not saying this happens, but, you know, you can technically think about who's on the other side so you can actually gear yourself up.
Are you talking about game plan A or game plan B?
We've been in this discussion before.
There's no game plan C if you lose both of those. Right? So.
Are you looking ahead to a semi-final or something already?
No, second's better. That's what you're saying. Hey, second's better.
Where you finish in your group, right?
You might end
second's
up
better.
Yeah.
More importantly, Mills, though, if you're on the other side, you're rubbing your hands together. If you're those other teams, you're going, this is that big
Australia,
chance to win a
Fiji.
Rugby World Cup. Fiji, for example.
But talk to your point about the Football World Cup, and they do their draw later. There's no harm, though, in the Netherlands playing Belgium in a Football World Cup quarter-final. That's a great quarter. Or Netherlands playing Argentina. So what's wrong with South Africa playing the All Blacks in a World Cup quarter-final? Because the depth of the competition has got that much greater. I mean, aside from the All Blacks playing South Africa in a World Cup quarter-final.
There haven't been that many teams win a Rugby World Cup.
No.
The top sides, you know, there's a clear gap. We can see it, you know, all likelihood the team that's going to go through.
But I agree with Ricky. I think one of the positives about World Rugby at the moment is that the top 8 are a lot closer.
We're sending that clip to Bill Beaumont. One of the positives. You just said that with World Rugby.
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
Give credit
We've broken new
due.
ground on the breakdown in 2022.
Give credit when credit's due.
In 2015, we went to that World Cup and it was kind of like, I can't really see anybody tipping up the All Blacks. 2011 we were here, obviously got a bit tighter, but it felt like it was the All Blacks, the way they were playing, and then a bit of daylight. Now there's 5-6 teams.
Yeah, and every World Cup we needed Japan, right?
Yeah.
Every World Cup we needed Japan. Let's hope that's Italy, because then we can all party. But, you know, we need these teams pushing. I firmly believe it's going to be Fiji.
Well, Ben O'Keefe said it last week, right?
Yeah. I think if they can get all their team together, I think if they can, over the next 2 years with Super Rugby, you know, get some forwards, Mills, with the excitement that they've got in Europe and some of their backs, that's going to be... You wouldn't want to come up against them. They nearly beat France in the last World Cup.
That's true. These guys are going to clear out shortly and we're going to get the leaders in for Super Rugby Aupiki. But speaking of having a party and a celebration, let's go back and relive the glory from Italy. 36 games, 7 years, and they finally get a win in the Six Nations.
Capozzo, 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 Capozzo! La meta dell'Italia! La meta dell'Italia! 21-20, bisogna realizzarla entro i pali, bisogna realizzarla! Che azione di Capozzo, che alla fine dentro i 22 è riuscito a servire Edoardo Padovani. Che meta degli azzurri, Edoardo Padovani, il mio idolo, 21-20. Bisogna realizzare questa meta, bisogna realizzarla. Vediamo l'azione di Capozzo, meraviglioso, il giocatore italo-francese che serve Edoardo Padovani, che va verso il centro dei pali e si tuffa a schiacciare in meta. Grandissima, grandissima meta azzurra.
fight the title here in Hamilton tonight. The power, the grace, the strength, the respect of mana wahine. What Super Rugby Aupiki has been all about. Got Semple goes to round 1 and then 2. Ball back and field for Woodman in open spaces. The Chiefs are putting on a clinic. Chiefs Manua, the inaugural Super Rugby Aupiki champions, and don't they deserve it? What a wonderful performance in the final. It was short, it was sharp, it was fast, but it was pretty damn good. Super Rugby Aupiki, the Chiefs Manua, congratulations, the inaugural champions. And what a panel we have got on the breakdown to discuss it. Hani Hirami Smiler, Stacey Flula, and Taylor Curtis, the champion, Stacey Flula.
Wow, you know, it's a little surprise here. For you, Ricky?
We don't get much Chiefs celebrations in the studio anymore these days. Congratulations. So what has the last couple of weeks been like for you, for the Chiefs, and everything that you've achieved in some pretty difficult circumstances?
Yeah, such a surreal feeling winning last night, but the last couple of weeks was absolutely awesome with the ladies. We talk about making sacrifices, and we did that for the love of the game. We all love playing rugby, and, you know, we bubbled for 2.5 weeks with such an awesome bunch of people, from our management to our whole squad of 34 players. Probably a career highlight for me, one of. I mean, Hani just mentioned before that one of mine might have been debuting with her when she used to be fast, but she can just stay here now. But no, it was definitely awesome, man. I'm so grateful that I got to be a part of the first Super Rugby Aupiki competition.
Well, you've won a few titles, including this one here. This is Nancy. This is the Women's Rugby World Cup, of course, on the line later in the year. We will get to that shortly, the World Cup. But Taylor and Honey, let's look at this Aupiki. Obviously, Taylor, your sister was in the Blues and in the bubble. What did you make of it?
I just thought it was amazing. You could already tell the level of skill out there was much higher than the FPC that we've seen. You know, they've got that depth all along through the bench. And then when they bring it on, you're seeing impact there straight away. And just to see that it's really hard for them to break that line. Obviously, we saw some massive hits. Yeah. And so, you know, it's great just to see it all out there and some more players put their hands up.
Hans, you and I were lucky. We were at the pre-season game in Taupo, where I think I got a bit I had to look away from the screen on the first haka because I got a bit emotional. But how have you seen it, the quality of rugby, what the competition was?
Oh, yeah, I thought it was a great opportunity. And it's been a long time coming, this competition. It's all about the pathways for me, and seeing these women, these wahine toa, go out there and showcase their skill level. As you mentioned, the physicality, which we know our Aotearoa wahine do so well. But just, you talked about culture, Stace. A key moment for me actually was after the game, and seeing all the players go into the stands and grab their kids, grab their families, and bring them onto the stage. That was special because that's what we're about, is that family culture within our women's rugby systems.
Yeah, because, I mean, and we see with some of the kids, and there was, I know you had a couple of the kids in the bubble with the Chiefs, little me, Tirana, Ali's eldest daughter. But what we were seeing prior to that game is women standing here and their kids 2 or 3 metres away. They couldn't go to them. And when you talk about sacrifice, how hard was that on some players?
Oh, tough, you know. Emotionally, it was real hard. They couldn't physically touch them, but they knew it was for a reason. And one day they'll look back, their kids will be able to see that footage and say, look, my mum, or, you know, what my auntie was out there who made a stand and who was the start of the Super Rugby. So, yeah, they'll definitely be grateful for it in future, but it's just I guess it's just all about a part of it.
We've picked some of our favourite players, some MVPs. I think the three of us are kind of in agreement. Who did you two have for your MVP?
Yeah, Hazel Tupic, off the cup. That was a no-brainer for me. Just her game management, her skill level, and just the way she really owned that 15 space, her positioning. I mean, there wasn't really a thing that she done wrong, Stace.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I love playing with Hazel. She's just so calm. She's composed. She plays with so much freedom. I mentioned it in last week's game. And the one thing I love about Hazel is she's like a little silent assassin, because she doesn't say much, but when she does, wow, she can inspire. And she's definitely done that for our team.
I mean, I'm not disappointed that you haven't picked working with the Sky Crew as your MVP moment, Stacey, but that's okay. Look, I will always be a big fan of Kelly Brazier, but Taylor, you've gone.
Yeah, I've gone completely
elsewhere.
Someone else. I went for Mele Hufanga, just purely because when she came off that bench, you felt her presence on that field, and she made such a statement. She'd get the go-for that the Blues needed, and even versing the other teams, they had to alter their defence and get 2 or 3 people on her to just manage to stop her.
I think what we love seeing about a player like Millie is the character, and we saw the personality in the post-match. And do you think, Hans, I guess, well, we hope that people have learned a bit more about these women and what they're about and just being themselves out there too?
Yeah, well, I think it's about us owning that space, and that we're playing the game how we want to play the game. And the players that went out there, they did exactly that. And I know there's probably a lot of criticism, you know, really this was a competition that turned into a tournament, and the turnaround, and then having to deal with the likes of COVID and some of these players, you know, having to fast track their recovery from contracting COVID to then go out on the field and probably not really get the build-up that they wanted in terms of really taking off, because this was a part of history and they wanted that moment, but it was just so rushed. And so I think, you know, there's a lot that we can do better in this space.
Your mate Teresa Fitzpatrick had to leave the field early, so you didn't get the clash, and then did you think, oh my God, Millie is coming on at me? I've just come back from a shoulder surgery, and now she's going to be coming at me?
Yeah, a little. I thought they were doing a little tactical sub there, but it was a little bit too early. But I love playing against amazing players like that. You know, Millie Hufanga, she actually bumped me off in the game, so my brothers will probably remind me of that when I go home and see them this week. But it's cool. It's cool to see the talent out there. It showcased a lot of breakout players, and that was cool. The standard of the game is definitely growing, and I'm probably going to be kicked out soon.
Oh,
I'm still young.
yourself. Yeah, breakthrough players, and we've been weighing up, you know, is it a breakthrough or is it a breakout? Taylor, there's been some players that have probably put their name up in lights for a selection for the World Cup later in the year.
Yeah, well, for me, I chose Renee Holmes just purely because we saw a little bit of her at the Northern Tour, but I like to see her in this tournament where she put her hand up and she did an amazing job. And for me, it was in particular her defence. She made some crucial tackles and turnovers in that red zone when their team needed it. And so she stepped out, and she's still so young.
Yeah, we loved her, Hans.
100%, yeah, she was definitely a favourite in my books, but, you know, also the likes of Monica Tanguai, Liana Michele too. I mean, the talent that we have coming through has been amazing. Luca Connor was a massive standout for me because we've really struggled in that hooker position, especially around the line-out. So for me, I think Luca just took the reins back to herself, and it was just good to see her really enjoy her rugby stace.
Yeah, that's it. She's been out of the fold with injury and stuff, so for her to come out and step up like the way she did, she was probably a stand-up for me too, being biased to Archie's Manawa. But it was definitely Kaipo Olsen-Baker for me too. She was a hit, you know. She came back from injury and she just played with so much confidence and aggression, and that's what I loved about seeing these young girls stepping up and being confident in their role.
A player like Kaipo Olsen-Baker coming back from a really serious knee injury. Christina Sua, the mate, she's been coaching her at Manakuta as well, but only 1 or 2 years out of high school. What does it give, honey, for these young women who now have an opportunity to dream of being a professional athlete to now, though, that they can be a professional rugby player? There's still a few Black Ferns contracts up for grabs now too.
Well, and they're definitely up for grabs right now because the talent really that the likes of Glenmore, West Clark will be looking at, you know, some of these players haven't had the opportunity to necessarily showcase all of what they can do through the Whareparma because that competition was a little bit disrupted as well. But Aupiki has really exposed some of these players and some of these breakthrough players, and they've put their hands up, and we know that the Black Ferns have come off a pretty rough Northern Tour and they weren't happy with it, but it puts everyone now on alert that look what we've got, look who's challenging now for your spots.
What have you noticed change, Stacey, from that Northern Tour that you're on last year? And that was really tough going, and for everybody involved, I think, to watch the Black Ferns to have fallen that far behind. Where have you seen improvement, or has there been so far? Will the Northern teams go, okay, they're going all right?
Yeah, I honestly just think that the girls have been doing their work physically, the conditioning side of things. Leading into end of year tour, they didn't really have much exposure and connection with one another. So to see them come out in good shape for Super Rugby Aupiki, I definitely think that's helped. And if we want the game to grow, you know, we need the players to continually grow, and there's so many younger ones coming through, and I definitely think that's one of the things that's helped.
Watching what we've seen in Super Rugby Aupiki, a lot of players, and as we've seen, lots who've put their names up. Do you have any areas of the concern, though, Taylor, going into the Black Ferns and what they've got coming with this World Cup at home in October?
Well, I just think that, I guess, having more of that time together. So we've got Super Aupiki, it's meant to be the build-up for the World Cup, but we probably won't see that build-up until years to come. So at the moment, they've put this tournament here. We can see the players put their hands up for those spots. They can use it as a selection process. process and then go forward and get that time together, because that will be the most important thing, is that game time, because they didn't have that before the Northern Tour.
Yeah, I think game time, but also the conditioning of the players. I mean, you look across Super Rugby Aupiki, we had, 130 players involved in that. Maybe 30, 40 of them are on contracts, whether that was with the 7s or the 15s. But it's the resources and everything else that needs to go into these players, because there's going to be a lot of players outside of that 30 or 40 players that are putting their hand up. So they need those resources, and they need it now, because we're only a few months out from World Cup.
Conditioning, you'd mentioned the word there. It was exposed on the Northern Tour. What needs to happen, and in what areas for that to improve?
I think it's always got to start up front with our pack, our type 5. We need some 80-minute players there. We've got some, but they need, again, it's got to come back to that resource, and it's got to come back to the players, take some ownership on that, put their hands up and say, look, I've got to get myself to this level if I want to keep this World Cup here in New Zealand.
Yeah, I honestly think that the selectors probably will have to look at form now, like current form. You can't really go off ladies who've performed and done well at the last World Cup. That's 5 years ago now. The game's evolved. Players are now stepping up all around the world. In New Zealand, there's so many coming through. So I think the selection process is going to be quite tough. And, you know, I'm obviously putting my hand up and I'm going to try my best to make it there. But there's so many different positions up for grabs. And I definitely think, Honey, I agree with you in terms of our forward pack. Mentally, physically, they just need to bring the mindset to go out there and want to dominate.
Is there going to have to be some really tough calls made, Taylor, on players who have been there and done it, as opposed to some who are coming through and maybe shone in Aupiki?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm glad I'm not selecting, to be honest.
Exactly. Like, from this tournament that we've just seen, these players putting their hand up, it's putting the pressure on the players that have already maybe felt like they've got a spot in that team. And if they already felt like they've got a spot, they still have to work incredibly hard to get the starting spot, to keep it contained, to work on the game, because we all are players that are always striving to get better, you know. And I guess going against the teams from in the Northern Tour, it's put on recognition that you have to be fitter, you have to work harder, you can't just sit back and rely on these stats and numbers. It has to be transferred to game fitness as well.
So to be interested to ask, you all of a sudden you get a contract. That doesn't necessarily mean you know how to be a professional, what that means. What does that entail, and is that something some players haven't quite grasped yet?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a mix, and especially the young ones coming through. You come out of school and you've been given this contract, but they haven't actually been given opportunity yet. So probably comes down to the experienced ones helping and controlling that, because a contract's a contract, but it doesn't mean that you're guaranteed a starting spot. You're not guaranteed to be in the squad. Sometimes you have camps and there's no contracted players there. So it's all about whoever actually does the hard work behind the scenes. You're exposed. So you have to keep working. You can never hide in this environment. It's a professional environment now. And yeah, while it's good to have a contract, but you still have to do all the hard mahi behind the scenes.
The Women's Rugby World Cup, or Rugby World Cup 2021, playing in 2022. Tickets are on sale, ticketek.co.nz. I mean, it cost you $5 to get along. Why wouldn't you? In October. Just quickly, ladies, before we get on, what do you want to see, Taylor, in the next 5-6 months leading into the World Cup to ensure the Black Ferns can keep this baby?
I just want to see some more game time with them together, not just the camps, but like have some teams come over, get, you know, that recognition, what they need to work on, because every time you have a game together, you'd come back, you're always analysing those work-ons.
And for you?
Yeah.
Stay fit.
Stay fit. Stay fit.
That'll be
injury-free. Injury-free.
Honey, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I agree with Taylor. A lot more games, a lot more opportunities, a lot more resources, a lot more structures around the program, and just letting people know what's coming up. We know we've got this Pack 4 coming. You know, we've just come off this high from Super Rugby. So what next? What can we watch in terms of women's rugby, and what have we got to look forward to?
Well, you guys are all blooming awesome. We better get the other mod back. And thank you so much, Honey Hiddamismana. Stacey, all the very best to you and the team. Everything coming up, and Taylor as well. You'll be back in the studio sometime soon. Anyway, Rugby World Cup 2021, playing in 2022. Coming in October. Lots more to come here on Sky Sport. More to come on The Breakdown too. And if you're not busy, 8 o'clock Wednesday night, catching up with one of the greats.
First thing that crosses my mind, I need to obviously kill a bit of time. So I knew no one was following them behind, so I just brought to the sideline.
Carlos Spencer twists the knife in the in-goal area.
Very Carlos, you know, I think we were all there before any Crusader player was anywhere near, and we were all walking to the corner before he put it down.
So there's about 4 of us just following him like sheep, and we're like, okay. But they just wanted me to put the bloody ball down. Yeah, so one of those moments that made the Crusaders love me even more.
Oh, yep, here they are. They're the ones I want. Found them. Well, this is my first jersey. This was Auckland Marist. For those of you who don't know, best club in New Zealand. This was my final jersey. JK, you'll know it well. It was phenomenal, Jimmy. There was, I think, at any given time, there was about 20 All Blacks, 22 All Blacks that played in that final. And it was played in front of 20,000 people. It's a jersey that's close to the heart, you know. It's really something that you pull out every now and again and go, you know, that was the first time I'd won it for a while. And I can tell you what, the night was pretty good as well.
Kerwin, support there from Howard. Howard, tackle's not being made, Howard gets there.
Getting the ability to play for Auckland launched the pathway to what happened in later years, but to be able to be in that environment, you know, and around those players, when you had the Wettons, you had Fitzy, it went on and on of who was there, but probably the biggest influence for me was Foxy.
And Fox is going to get a rare try, is he? Yes, he is. Grant Fox.
You know, in '93, I went on tour with the All Blacks and played my first game. I remember playing against Leicester at Welford Road. Terrible game of rugby, but it was my debut, so it meant everything to me. And then after that tour, I was hankering to really get a test, and I just want to thank the French. In 1994, the second test, the try from the end of the earth, or whatever it's called, meant Laurie made changes. Matty Cooper had torn his groin, so they needed a goal kicker. You remember your numbers, it was the 9th to the 7th, so it was the day after my birthday in 1994. And I pulled the jersey on to play South Africa in Dunedin, and just an amazing experience. Just an utterly amazing experience, and that's where JK did what JK did, just beat about 6 people and put the ball down, and we won, and that was the first game in New Zealand since 1981 of New Zealand Springboks. So it was a massive occasion, and to be able to be part of that, but also just to pull the jersey on, be able to stand there and the anthem and the haka was something everyone dreams about.
And you played in the draw the last time the All Blacks didn't win at Eden Park.
Yeah. You know, people remind me that I kicked 6 goals, but I was annoyed because I missed Brendan Venter and he scored a try. He just beat the All Hands up, and that was what really annoyed me. And Laurie reminded me of that missed tackle.
Bunce. Howard is up. Wilson looking good. But Howard gets it.
And then we went on to the game that probably everybody remembers was the Aussie game, the Gregan tackle. And Goldie, you should have passed me the ball.
And Wilson. Oh, that is a save by Gregan.
This is my jersey playing for Wales. To have the opportunity to play international rugby again was pretty special for me. You know, I had the opportunity to choose between England and Wales, and I chose Wales, and I'll never regret that. And as much as I said about the All Black jersey, when you run on, the atmosphere, the environment was just, honestly, it was phenomenal. You know, I played 19 tests. I'd defy you to go to any Welsh person and say Shane didn't put everything in, and there's 19 times he ran on the field for Wales, because I did. And I can tell you now, if I went to England, financially I'd have been better off. So, you know, I believed I was Welsh, I still believe I'm Welsh, and I was proud to put the jersey on, and that's the end of the story. I don't really care what other people think. I gave everything to the jersey, and I know deep in my heart that the Welsh people knew that.
Jenkins, there's a real chance here for Wyatt. Wyatt back inside, and it's a lovely try for the fullback. Howard the scorer, and how he deserves it.
No, it was a sad way to end it. I didn't want to end it that way. However, I stayed on for another 3 years in Wales with the people, and that showed I wasn't there for any glory or any bloody money. I was there because I enjoyed being in, with and around Welsh people. Well guys, that's my jersey tale. Thanks for letting me share it, and I hope you enjoyed it.
We absolutely did. He's a heck of a story. There's obviously, I've only been on the show a couple of times. This is the second time I've seen Maris jerseys.
Yeah, he's a good Maris man. Good Maris man, Harry. Really good man, really good player. It was sad to see him go, you know, as a Maris man, but also as an All Black. He was really elusive and just one of those really talented players, Goldie, eh?
There's an unwritten rule on the show. We don't play that footage. That footage doesn't get a run. Jim Kays, I'm calling you out, Jim. Unbelievable. Look, Howie was a really, really good rugby player. He really was. Played against him for Auckland, obviously played with him at the All Blacks. Look, he had a really strong fullback skill set. You know, was a really good driver. And look, I think was a really strong international player as well. You know, and you know, he delivered on that in that third test against South Africa.
Yeah.
You know, South Africa in New Zealand. He delivered. He delivered. And I thought he was an outstanding, you know, when the pressure came on, and being a goal kicker in a test match, and I've been there and done that, and I've failed doing that against England in my second test at Twickenham. You know, he helped us draw a test match against South Africa and a series. Now, we wanted to win, but bottom line, that's not easy to do. That's the mark of the man who understood pressure and didn't shy away from it.
I love how he really owns that whole thing that happened with Wales too, and that it's a shame in a way that a player like that, he's always going to have the word granny gate attached to him when he's so much more than one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you know, he's wearing his heart on his sleeve, is really passionate about the fact that he is Welsh and what he sort of done for the jersey. And I suppose where I sort of met him was from the coaching aspect. You know, he really helped my game. He's seen as the way he was able to run, but the kicking side of my game, and being able to do that, and that was something he was absolutely passionate about. Is, you know, the coaching and passing on that knowledge to the younger generation.
Nice one. We like Jersey Tales. Good one, Jim. Let's get on to... Oh, sorry, Jim. Sorry. I'm not coming back next week. I can enjoy it. It's all good. Right, let's get to Super Rugby Pacific and let's have a look at the points table. Brumbies, Reds, Waratahs in the top three. The Crusaders, Chiefs and the Force. There's a thing you never used to see that on the front page. And then the Blues, Canes, Fiji and Drua, the Rebels, Highlanders and Moana Pacifica. But part of me kind of feels that table's just a little bit irrelevant at the moment because it's been another week of a hot mess.
Yeah, look, a tragedy. We lost a couple of games on the weekend. We haven't got the Trans-Tasman component of this competition going, so you're probably not going to see things maybe even out, but you can't deny the fact that performances from the Brumbies at home, they've gone about their business and winning their games. But I'm going to focus on one thing I want to talk about from the Moana Pacifica game against the Chiefs, Tupo Vai. Second game on the blindside flank. This is the type of body I want playing in number 6 for us in the All Black jersey. I think we've seen something over these two games where he's got the versatility, Mills, he's got the skill set, he has a big body who loves to carry, he can hit defensively, he's a target of the line-out. Very similar in some ways to Shannon Frizzell, and whether or not these two guys for me, and whether or not he is an option in the blindside flanker jersey. If you're talking about balance and you start talking about Sam Cane and Adi Savia, Dalton Papali'i, I look at this. This is this genuine athlete who's put on some serious size. We've talked about the Six Nations. Is this the right type of athlete in our 6 jersey?
Wow.
He's a Chiefs man through and through, so...
It's got to excite you when you see a guy, you know, that young, being able to do that sort of, there's different sort of styles, you know, being able to sort of mix it up in terms of the physical, get out wide, free up and offload. He did it in the Crusaders game, I think, a couple of weeks ago as well, but also his height and ability to actually... you know, get up in as a line-out option. So when you're sitting there, but I would like to carry that on in terms of bringing it back a little bit. Imagine where Clayton McMillan and Getz are sitting down at the moment. Their depth. If you're able to put someone there to be able to play at Lucy, and you're talking about him being an All Black Lucy, they have got massive depth, and they are threatening this competition, like I said in round 1.
They are building.
Smirking away, JK.
Go on, JK.
I'm just smirking because I'm going to do a bring back Buck. Because all I hear is we want to replace Jerome Kaino. Is that what I keep hearing?
Well, we haven't found the replacement for Jerome Kaino since he just the natural.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking. Are we trying?
Are we looking for the
Are
clone?
we trying to look for something that is actually not there? And what style of rugby? Like, I think both those guys are amazing, and I don't disagree. But what I'm saying is, what are we actually looking for in that position? Are we looking for a wide-ranging player that's going to run the ball wide like we just saw, or are we going to see someone around the rucks that's just going to smash people? Because when you think back to Jerome, he was that fear factor, but he carried the ball well, but his fear factor was he actually smashed people, right? And you'd go out there, the opposition would go out there and they'd be looking for them. So what actually do we want from our six?
Right? I want that.
'Cause you want that.
I
Well,
want that.
that's
I
great,
want
but that's what we need to
physicality.
decide, right?
I want-
And if you want that, I think Frizzell, I think both of them are playing incredibly well at the moment. I think Frizzell started exceptionally well. He's carrying hard. But I would like to see one of them take control of saying, I'm going to be that.
So if that's what you want to see as your six, what then dictates who's at 8 and 7 in terms of the style that you want from them? Does that sort of hinder what we have there, or do you want
more
6 and
physicality?
7 and 8?
I want more and more physicality, relentlessness that you get from Sam Cane and Dalton Popoli. That's what I want. And then it's what you get at number 8. And Peter Gus Sowakula, another Chiefs man, you look at what he's bringing in terms of his ability to carry. Same thing. I think size matters, and these guys have got athleticism as well. So I just look at that, JK.
Can you play these two together? Could you play Vi and these two together at the next level?
Look, but Artie was that good last year, right? He was that good last year. You're thinking to yourself, how do I put him in the picture? I just think, to me, we need that sort of physicality when we start getting up to the next level.
I think you can play them together at the next level, right? I think you can. The thing is, the focus has to be, what is their role? You know, is Tupou, a little bit sort of loose? Peter Gus don't get as loose as that, but, keep running direct, keep running strong. We've got to test them out in the next level.
We've got to get out of here. We've had 5 minutes of Super Rugby, but I want to, before we go, I mean, that tells you what's happening with Super Rugby at the moment, right? We've spent four minutes talking about that, but I want to talk
You want to dance out?
No, I want to see the gold
dance.
shoes.
The
I want to
Italian
see
dancer.
get
The dancers?
the gold shoes out for those who just...
What's your hamstring?
That's because the hamstrings
What's
are quite
the go
good.
with the gold shoes?
That's because Italy won. I've been wearing those all day.
But
Because that win was gold. Get your gold shoes out and do some dancing, people. Italy won.
Can I just do a quick shout out as well? Nathan Ardi, good friend of the show, has been on the show for a season. He turned 50 today. Happy birthday, mate. You're an absolute champion, one of the best broadcasters and creative people and minds that I know. Happy birthday.
Well, look, let's hope we get a full round of some Super Rugby Pacific this week. We're away. Some new games coming too for Moana Pacific.
Midweek next week.
You've got some midweek footy coming too, so fingers crossed.
Yeah, and toes.
And toes, and everybody staying healthy. Good to see you back, and well, nice to see you guys. Hopefully,
Thanks, Ricky.
Kirst will be back with us next week, and I might come back one time. I might just swan off overseas somewhere.
Welcome anytime.
See you later.
See ya.
Positive.